So we would like to take some time tonight to first wrap up what we were discussing last week, and then introduce another like bonus topic, let's say, which we decided to put for today. Then the plan is that tomorrow we will also have a lecture. We won't have the battle next week. That is because the teams needed some time to prepare better, so we decided to give us more leeway with this. Before we move on to today's stuff, any questions from the last time? Things which we have left over? We should address. Logistics. All good? All right. So, first off, since we rushed it last time, I wanted to recap a bit on this part of the science in action, because I think it might have been way too late, let's say. So, from those that remember from last time, what do you remember about this whole science in action club? And all the discussion on the black boxing we also had. By the way, as usual, can I ask you to shut down your computers, devices, and stuff, unless you're in a note keepers, I guess? So, science and action. Any reminiscences from last time? Okay, well, let's start the discussion over, right? So the idea, last time we discussed all the perspectives on ambiguity. We've seen weak ambiguity and strong ambiguity, and we have said science in some way can be seen as an effect of strong ambiguity because everybody has a different perspective, and we as researchers shape the objects which we make, and in some way the objects which we make shape our way of research, and they shape our way of proceeding into science itself, right? So we started from saying we are exploring that part of science which is not ready-made, which is not black box. We have seen some principles that we'll go over again. So the first principle is that we are saying that the qualities of the objects which we analyze are a consequence and not a cause of our experience. And what do we mean by this? What do you think this principle means? Now we have some more time to explore. So if I can ask you about this is a smartphone, right? Does it have meaning in and of itself? Is this a smartphone if this is the only smartphone in the world? No? Because there's nothing else to connect it, right? So this is a smartphone. Well, let's assume that there are smartphones in the world, and this is a smartphone that runs Android. If I'm a developer, I want to build an application for a smartphone. Which system should I target, and why? Please.
I think we have to develop an application that will be used for clarifying the measures which are Android. Because according to the statistics, the number of Android users is so you can according to my idea,
So you're saying if I want to develop an application and I want to make it profitable, I should target the majority of the users, and I should target Android in this case. Okay.
If you have just one application.
Yeah. Good enough. Any other opinions on this? Okay, so you're saying, well, if I have to start with a small investment of time and resources, maybe I should target Android and then broaden the spectrum. Okay, what would be the benefits of broadening the spectrum aside from the obvious more people that can buy Android? So my question is, how does it make it different? So without taking away from the equation the fact that one system is used more than another, how would it be different if I targeted like iOS for a paid application instead of Android? Do you think there's any difference? Or
You have the license to apply group for the actual developer.
I have a license and I have a chosen Okay, so there is a license to play in the iOS case, you don't have to play in the Android case. And from a sales perspective, do you expect your paid application to sell better on Android or on iOS?
Because with iOS, I'm sure that if I target a specific system, the great majority of the users would use it. For example, if I develop something in augmented reality, I'm sure that if I release it on the Apple Store, it will be downloaded a lot. With Android, maybe not.
So you're saying Android has a greater fragmentation while iOS is more unified. And not only this, but there's also another interesting bit of statistics, which is that in general, the iOS applications tend to be, well, let's say iOS users, let me rephrase again. There's a larger percentage of iOS users which are paying for their application than there is of Android users which are paying for their application. So in some way, the conversion rate of a user of a device to a user of a paid application on a device is higher for iOS than this is for Android. So how does this link to this sentence here, if it does? Oh, well, let me just fix this. Anytime, yes. Could you speak up a bit?
The Android users are usually trying to use the application. If they don't like the application, just delete it. But according to the iOS users, you have to pay before you have to use the application. And the users of Android, the developers of Android, unless you have to download the application, it will increase your money. But in case of iOS, the person who choose the application, it must be sometimes enable the system before running the application, because sometimes you have to pay for $100. So I think if the Android users just download the application and try it, if they don't like it, just remove it.
Okay.
But in the end, the developer, the counter of downloads will be increased.
What I'm wondering is, okay, this is relevant, but what I'm wondering is how does it link to this sentence? The fact that the features of the machine and their qualities rest on the user hands, and they are a consequence, not a cause, of collective action. So we have had this discussion on Android and iOS, okay? What I'm saying is that we are giving qualities to these markets and qualities to these devices and these operating systems. So how do you think that, after all this discussion, do you think these are, and their qualities, okay, are a consequence or a cause of our action? So we're saying that the iOS users tend to pay more, okay, well, whatever this means, then we can quantify this. But the quality that they tend to be paying more, or they tend to be wealthier, because affording an iOS device requires more money than affording an Android device. Is this a consequence or a cause of our collective action? As users, developers, and companies, let's say, that manufacture devices. Do you see what I'm getting to?
In my opinion, it really depends on the perspective you see the factor. On one side, you have, okay, I'm selling this product, and I see that most of my customers are wealthy, or that kind of thing, and then on this days I can choose, okay, I can make these people pay for applications and maybe choose the best application and for some more specific policy on the kind of application I provide. On the other side, we can see the same thing like this. I'm selling this product that has a higher price, so and has a higher quality in some way. So this is a cause, and the effect is that more wealthier people can afford it.
So you're saying in some way there is, I can see it both ways, like top down or bottom up. Okay, this is interesting because this is exactly the key metaphor of the size in action, which I don't have the picture here, but it was that Janus Vickers, right? It's the two faces of the same problem. But in some way you can see it like this. If we assign a quality to a machine, to a system, what Latour goes on a machine, we call it system, an operating system, or whatever, we can say that most of these, you can give an initial seed, but the final quality is given as a consequence rather than a cause. What I mean is that the fact that the iOS is a premium device, for sure, is given by the fact that initially these had a higher price mark, but then the fact that these have a higher price mark creates some sort of a feedback loop, which makes it, well, then it is a premium device and creates a collective perception around this. See what I mean? So we are saying that some of the devices, the systems, the machines that we make, they might have a seed, but then the quality which we assign to them is a consequence of our action. If nobody bought Apple devices, they wouldn't be a premium device. They would be a luxury good that nobody affords. There wouldn't be a market that we would compare with Android. If Android wouldn't have had this fragmentation of their market, we wouldn't say it has the ability to reach so many people. So in some way, the way in which we develop an object then assigns quality to it as a consequence of our collective action. Is this sort of sensible? If not, why isn't it?
The idea is that, as it is in the title of the Latour books of Science in Action, we could see also, we could remove science because it talks about science, but it could be also technology. So the fact that the technology or the science that we do is made in action. It's not a process that it ends with the release on the market of the technology itself. So it's not that I'm a developer, I'm a designer, and I design a piece of technology that could be this laptop, and it ends here. Because once that the laptop starts to be used by users, these reframe the way in which this technology is real, the reality of this technology. Because if no one uses it, it's not something real. If it's used for some specific reason, then maybe this technology becomes a real niche market technology for some kind of users. But maybe it spreads and it becomes used by a lot of different people, and then its qualities change again because you need to adapt it. And the technology, which is not only the physical technology, not only the code that you wrote, but it's also all what is around them. It's this collective action in there. So it's the use that people do, is the way it's perceived, is the regulation that allows this technology to be said. It's the way that shape its form and its reality. And it happens with technology and also with science. That's the main example of Latour.
So in other words, this means that I might design a laptop to be used by like non-well-educated users to make it accessible, but if then everybody that uses it is a very well-educated user, it's developers, then the reality of that object changes. My intention was an object for beginners, then it actually turned out to be an object for advanced users.
This is what happened, for example, with, I don't know if you remember it, maybe not, the one laptop per child initiative was an initiative made, I think, 10 years ago, something like that, by MIT professor, Nicholas Negroponte, which wanted to give to produce this cheap laptop for underdeveloped countries, so that could be affordable by every child in these countries. I remember it's something like $90, something like that. But he didn't consider that people doesn't have electricity there, so there were problems of batteries, then also probably of skills of people, so they doesn't know how to use it, and it failed.
This will be also explored later by Andrea in what we call the network effect, because this is also part of. The second slide which we had was this part of the study of science in action, as it's science is being made and as it is being controversial. And we have mapped this, I think that we all remember, to the battles, to how we reopen controversies, how we explore where they go, starting from different premises. I think this we can go a bit quicker. And we also had that discussion on black boxes, which I think most people remember, because we said we approach things in a black box perspective, both from our devices point of view. As developers, we approach black boxes in terms of the TCP/IP stack, how networking works, how our interconnectivity between devices works, but also we approach it as black boxes in the lab. We approach it as a black box how a microscope works. We don't care how it works, we just care that it makes pretty pictures. Cameras, any device, microphones, any device is in some way approached as a black box for the sake of convenience, we said. And then we stopped here. We stopped at saying, well, if we analyze scientific literature, which by the way is also done by the Turing book, we have some more questions. How does scientific literature work? We all know that I make an article. In my article, I have a bibliography. So this means I'm supposed to study and base my claim on a number of other papers, of other articles, which I gather. I say, this guy says this, that person says that. I pile these two claims and I make a third one, which is original. Then at some point, somebody else will use my claim to justify theirs. It's some sort of incremental accretion. But the question is, why does a given article have a lot of citations and why does other have nothing? Is this pure combinatorics? Does this mean that eventually the human knowledge will cap out because we will have tried all the combinations of articles and suddenly we don't have any more?
Actually, the majority of the articles, there are some statistics, something like the 80% of the articles are never cited. So they're brought for, we don't know why.
So if I can ask you a question, how many, so say that you're publishing a paper 2 years from now, how many citations do you expect to put on one of your papers? 10 pages, okay? 10 pages, ACN format, how many citations do you expect to do?
According to the project, I think that there are published around 5 papers, and 3 of them are not cited at all, but 2 of them are cited on the sites, because the quality of the content.
Well, let's say, no, I'm asking how many citations should you put? So how big your bibliography should be?
Okay. Also,
of course, yes.
The approach that you are building. Sometimes, if you have something to enhance in your paper, if you enhance something, you have to cite many things to have a complete base to upgrade your control. But according to some statistics, if you have a paper to do some statistics.
Okay, let me re-put the question. How many people here have read at least one academic article in their lives? Those who didn't raise your hand, you're over no cause. What I mean, like a bunch. I think 5. Who read 5? Okay. Who read 10? Keep your hands up when you put that down. Who read 10? Who read 20? Who read 50? Okay. Who read 100? Okay. Well, okay. So we have a sample though, right? how many citations did you encounter on average in the bibliography? How big was the bibliography on average? It's very, very tactile.
Around 20.
50, 20, something like this, right? And what was 25? And what was the average length of these articles? In pages? 7, 10, 8, okay? So there's 15 citations and versus 7 pages, okay? Very recently, the PhD thesis of Stephen Hawking was published. It had 120 pages, machine written, okay, so it's a typographic machine. How many citations do you think he put? What? 2 or 3, okay. 5, 10. 100? So how many citations do you expect to put on your own? Right? If you have to do it now, 100 pages, how many citations do you expect to put? 30? You'll be more probably, right?
According to my assumption, he's creating something or he's putting something. That means he does not have to put many huge citations. He just has a complete list, like cites from a paper of Einstein or something like that, and he just continue with his own ideas.
Okay.
So I think his citation is just like 2 or 3 citations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other guesses?
Quite the opposite. Because usually, I don't think that someone wakes up and says this brilliant idea and stuff. Usually, you have a lot of background work that allows someone to make a new discovery. Then, historically, we like to think about this genius person and stuff, but usually there is a lot of other people that work on that subject. So, I think that there are many citations.
Okay, so big number. Other opinions? Well, okay, I'll give you the answer. There's 17. Okay, 17. And these are relatively few for a document which has a lot of stuff inside. So, however, the way you can think about this is that it was 1961, okay? So it was 55 years ago. The time and the access which we had to resources was way more limited than what we have now. So if you put 17 citations, it's because you had to browse a library for days, look for them and say, okay, this is what I'm interested in. And today, if you make an article, you say, oh, damn, I have to put 50 citations. You just Google Scholar, you find a billion and you say, this guy has the same title as the sentence which I'm using. I'm saying, role of technology. This guy made a paper which is called Role of Technology, column something. And you say, okay, this is a good citation. You haven't even read it. Just read the title and they said, this is good. This is based on the principle of good faith. So you're saying, I'm assuming that as a researcher, I would publish everything in good faith. So if I'm doing a paper on the role of technology, I would title it the role of technology. Therefore, if I find something this way, I can cite it safely. Okay?
But the point is that nowadays, if you are going to do a research paper and you are going to search for your citation, you can find one citation from China, probably one India, actually mostly in our field of study. But 55 years ago, which university was he studying was like having most of the citations and most of the research have been done in that university that he didn't have access to a majority of research. He did have access to them.
Well, in some way I get your objections, but what I'm also saying is that what happens if somebody has a really groundbreaking idea on the other part of the world in a totally anonymous place, and he would have had access, he was missing, he had the potential to miss the access to that resource, which now we really don't. Because though it is true that we are getting, in our technical field, we're getting a lot of nitty-gritty research from Asia, they tend not to belong to single institutions. So you say, well, I expect to read an Indian and Chinese name in these papers, but you're not expecting a particular institution.
No. What I mean, maybe I said it in the wrong way. I mean that I forgot the name of his university. Was it
Cambridge?
Cambridge. Let's say 55 years ago, from 1,000 research done yearly, nearly 700 of it was in Cambridge and Oxford. Am I right? Mm-hmm. So if we say that he had access to Cambridge and Oxford libraries, then he had access to 70% of the research around the world. If now we lack this because we are living on the technology era, we can Google and we can access these things. But if we study like in Berkeley or MIT, then we don't have to go for Google, we can go to our library. So saying that he had only 17 because he didn't have access to like research in Asia, well, 55 years ago, there were no major research in Asia.
Well, I mean, this, this is
that's not true.
And moreover, what I'm saying is that there is a different cost to access it. The cost to access it, which I'm talking about, is that now you, as a person, as a single person, if you just want to say, well, I'm reading the titles of articles, as a single person, you can do it with one Google search, and in 1 minute you can process by yourself 100 titles. Okay? If you were back in the day, you would not be able to process 100 titles. You would physically have to go to your library, walk there, extract a volume, go to the index, flip some pages, and
find the page, read it, and
This is what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we have reduced the barrier of access to our access to knowledge. Okay, the barrier of access to knowledge. So what I'm wondering now is, why are some articles always cited? Why are some never cited?
Because if you are wanting to, I don't know, put out a new article on a certain topic, you will have to study something about it. You will search for some papers, and you will also see the bibliography of those papers and go to see the paper cited. And this is a technique thing that if I want to study on, I don't know, big data, I find a paper on big data.
Yeah.
I read this paper, I go to the bibliography, see these are the three major other papers, I go to them and continue this cycle through these.
The question here is how you end up with your article in this cycle.
I don't know, or maybe a very...
Because that's true, this is what happened. So how can you enter this cycle? It's the same question as how can your app arrive at the top selling of the marketplace?
It has to be either one of the first, I don't know, if we are...
should have novelty.
Yeah, should have some novelty, or either in the field or in the content. And
because you can divide the papers, in my opinion, you can divide them in two categories. First one would be theoretically novel. Second one would be novel applications. Applications mostly are the combination of the theory papers, and for example, there's a paper of this infrastructure, it's a paper of this algorithm. I combine them, I get into a new system, which I propose as a paper. But mostly the hard thing and the novel thing was in the theory papers. So it's not surprising to me if I find an application paper which has no citation.
Okay, so you're saying, well, there are some theory papers which if they propose some radical and correct in some way radically novel and correct ideas, they're going to be cited more because there's a larger bunch of application paper which basically take those theory and make combinatorics with a number of other applications to find a new application.
Quite yes.
Okay, you're saying, well, if I am one of the application papers, somebody might combine me with some theory to generate a new application, or worst case, I just stay there. Right?
Yes, otherwise I would be in the industry. Mm-hmm. I would not lead to another research.
Okay, yeah. There was another.
Yeah. Because I think they are describing how the system should work. But I think that if we look in practice how these distribution of the citation results, I think we can identify some main areas of the publication. And in each area, we are able to identify a community of a bunch of people that are highly cited in that topic, and when they publish, they cite one another. So we have this subgraph, which is highly connected, and then a lot of other publications that just have citation to this community, and there is no edge that goes back.
Okay, so I'm wondering the following. How does, in some way, well, I was doing like this because I just deleted some perfectly developed curves which were useful for this case. What I'm wondering is, how do you believe the type of, like the shape, let's say, very vaguely of the citation distribution, how do you believe it?
It's
Be a bell curve?
It's a power.
It's a
You
power?
mean the number of papers that has a certain number of citations is exactly a power.
So you're saying in some way I expect,
And the degree is roughly 2.
okay, this is probably somebody who's made the maths. And if they did the maths is good, because I don't have to. So you're saying if I have something, well, let me not label the axis as per the sake of this. You're saying it's something like this.
Yeah, where the axes are. On the y-axis, we have the number of papers, the number of citations, the number of papers.
It's number of citations.
The number of papers that has a certain number of.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's symmetrical to the.
Yeah, but
It was usually represented.
there's a number of papers, and here you have the number of citations. Okay, like this. Why is it not like this? I'm wondering just, why does it not distribute like this?
Well, because basically the underlying model is a richer model.
So what's there?
There is a model in game theory which is something like the richer gets richer or something like that, which is if I have more citations, I'm going to have even more because I'm more visible and all that kind of stuff.
So in some way this will lead very well to this network
And that's
effects.
the kind of behavior you.
Okay, so you're saying, well, if I have a lot of traction, it's likely that people will join in my loop in some way and like keep quoting this. And if I'm like here, I will move. In some way, I will try to. I will gather more and more citations openly, and if I exceed some threshold, it will move right. Oh, okay.
That's also why is there always the Dragon book for the compiler class. It's the same thing. Why everyone uses the Dragon book for the compiler class?
Ah, okay.
That's the same idea.
So
Because
since everybody
it's
uses the
most
same
famous,
book,
and if you are going if you have to write your own book and I don't know, sell it to your students, maybe they won't use it because there's these very firmly there's this book that is very famous, is good, it's already there, and
it's very acknowledged, it's very known, so everybody uses it. So why should I make a new standard in some way if there is one that already works?
if you make it, it will be very hard to let it fly off.
But the fact is that I think we should take into consider the reputation of the author and also the reputation of the publisher of the paper. Like, you know, for example, I don't know if you agree, probably you can judge better, but I can say that during my thesis, I noticed that the papers that are published in journals are more cited than the papers that are published in conferences.
It depends. This depends on the field that we're working on. For example, in human-computer interaction are more important conference than paper. So this depends. Then in every field you can find that there are some top class conference, top class or top class journal.
Yes. And also, like, let's say the reputation of the journal, I mean the impact factor. We can find some papers that are not that great, but they are published in there are very few, I know, but they're published in a very great journal. And because of the journal, probably a lot of people would.
So you trust the reputation of the journal.
Yeah.
So in some ways, you might see that this. Yeah, I think this is true. And you might say
Nowadays,
that
yes. In the past, no.
Yeah.
For example, if you know the Higgs theory of the boson, what's the name of the Higgs boson? Yes. The original paper was published in a journal which was not so much famous or so much important, but still is nowadays the top most cited in physics or whatever.
So this leads back to here. In some way, the journal, which journal is most cited, which journal is most reputable, and so on, is also a consequence of our actions. If we publish something, it creates a feedback loop which in some way redefines the quality around the objects which we are using. So this, in some way, leads us to this second principle. So as scientists and engineers and those in the fields that Latour calls technoscience, we do not only speak for ourselves, we speak also for a host of invisible allies behind us, which are our citations. Because if I'm citing you, in some way I'm also putting your result as part of my claim. So this creates a host of invisible allies behind us, which might in some way also be altered. Because I might use the same citation once to say, well, this is great, this is how I go on from here. And once to say this is terrible, by denying this, I create a new model. And this is still a citation. So this leads here. The claim that something is objective or subjective in the case of the Latour, but we can also just like more broadly say the claim of something to be good or valuable or not good and not valuable is just the effect of all the networking which we did. If I have a lot of traction and I say this person is terrible, in some way people might follow me and say, yes, this person is terrible, this work is terrible. Everybody agrees with me, and we redefine his work by saying, well, it was not a very good piece of literature. Because I have a lot of traction, I'm redefining and transforming this work by giving it an objective claim that it is fact. Because just because I have a lot of traction, now in some way defining what is good. Does this make sense? So, you want to ask something?
Also, according to the reputation of the person to say it's terrible.
Also according to the reputation of the person itself, making the claim. The standing of the person itself affects his work and the works they're linked to in some way, yes, definitely. So the question is, how does this link to the topics of IND which we have discussed? So we talked science, we talked devices, we talked literature, we talked everything. How does this relate to developing a company, innovation theory, horses and cars, and Ubers and taxis? It could also be that it doesn't. But we think it does. So why did we choose Uber? Why did we go with Uber and not with one of the gazillion different very samey ideas that probably were made around the same time? Why did we go with Facebook and not with the bajillion of other social networks which were being risen at that time?
Yes.
Visibility, what do you mean?
I mean, the most popular.
The most popular, but how did it get to be the most popular? Marketing, so they just poured money and they put their advertisements in visible places. Is this what you're saying? Okay.
The same kind of pattern we see in the papers, we see in the videos, we see in the books and whatever. The prompts just used to bring in people and the more people you have, the more detail.
So it's in some ways some feedback loop we're increasing, we're creating a point in which if we go over a threshold, which is hard to get to, but if we go over that threshold at some point, we'll keep growing traction, getting traction, eventually becoming viral. This is how we call those videos, right? A viral video, a viral book, bestseller, whatever you want to call it. Okay? So in some way, and you will see this with the lectures from, I think also from Andrea, but also from Helena, there is a certain point, and you will see it if you go on with the IMP track, with the DD lab and whatever, you will see that there is a point in which you have to cross this, some sort of gap, and if you do, you start getting into that part where everybody wants to be in. But very few people are there. Okay. The second topic, and you will see how it is related, is the topic of black swans, which we spoiled for some of the people that were there for Battle 6 preparation. In some way, this relates to this idea presented in a book written in 2007, where we say, okay, step back. So where we say that there are some events which we could have foreseen, but in some way we discarded, and they are of large scale, and since we discarded them, they are totally unexpected. So this happens, and the examples of this are financial crisis of 2008, something which we knew could happen, but we have said, well, I mean, it's good enough, it's not going to happen. We put it away, except at some point it did happen. It has a catastrophic event, and this is mostly done because we live in a world which is so complex that we cannot factor in all the alterations and all the details and all the variables which are part of the state of the world, which define the equation of the state of the world. So this, if you recall, is the very definition of weak ambiguity. The world is too complex, we create a subjective definition of it. And if we don't manage these events, we get to a black swan, which is a large-scale, unexpected event. So the name comes from this situation. Swans are typically white, and we define the swan as a white bird with some characteristic, long neck, wings, and shape, which is, okay, that's a swan. What happens if you observe a black swan? How do you go along with it? What are your options? So you observe a swan which is totally identical to your white swan, which you have always called a swan, except it's black. What happens then? How can you go along with it? There's at least 3 ways of approaching this problem.
You decide it's not a swan.
You can decide that it's a swan, but it's black.
You can decide it's a swan, but it's black. So what do you do? So if you say, well, it is a swan, but it is black, what do? Do you retcon your definition?
No, you just say, wow, I'm passive. You just say, wow, I'm passive. This is one of the approach.
You can say, wow, I'm
passive.
And we pass it. And you say, well, okay, well, we found a black one. Okay, it's an outlier. Right? Okay.
But maybe biology experts studies genes and I don't know, do more.
Well, if we are still in the age in which we assume that all swans are white, we don't have genetics, okay? So
yeah.
we're not make a big assay, okay? So in this sense, I get it that now you would be able to do this, but you're saying, well,
I think Palermo in these examples say something that we are bird watcher from the 1800s, and we observed that in Europe every swan is white. And then we go to Australia and we saw a black swan.
So how can we do this? So one thing you say, well, that was an example.
So we can try to understand why it is black.
Okay, we can understand why and do what?
So example, foresee what will happen next. Maybe it's just the beginning of something.
So you're saying, well, maybe this is an outlier, but it is something which foreshadows deeper consequences down the line. So I should say, well, this definition which I had, that all swans are white, is obviously no longer true, but I hold my judgment as to what the implications of this black swan are until I have more observations.
I mean, if it happened, maybe it should have happened, but maybe it can happen again.
So you're saying I saw one, there's no guarantee that I will not see many more. It can happen again.
But it can.
So what do you do with your definition?
That I need to expect that something different, that one can happen, so I need to be ready for that.
So if you say, I need to be ready to take my definition and toss it away because I might find more. I might need a new definition. Okay. So first approach, well, there's an exception. Second approach, okay, we found an exception. We have to be ready to redefine it. Other approaches? Deny it. What do you mean? Somebody colored it. It's not actually a swan. It's not a black swan. It's somebody that just painted it. Okay? No, it is an option. It is definitely an option to say this thing is impossible. Okay? It defies the definition. It defies our understanding. It is illogical. So it defies all explanation. We can just toss it away. Okay. Other options?
Yes, we have a family of swans. The first part of the family is black swans and the second part is white swans. So the definition
So you can toss away your definition, or not toss it away completely, but say the fact the whiteness property is not part of the definition of a swan. We can adapt all other things, and we can say that the swan is this bird with that shape and that wings and so on, but without mentioning the color. Okay, this is indeed pretty much the three main approaches which you can have in general. One thing is saying a black swan is not a swan. It's something else. It's somebody painted. Okay. Second option is that we are saying we are observing an outlier, and then we can decide how to act on it. We can say, well, we can prepare that if we find more, we adapt, or we can also just say, well, it's an outlier. It happens. It's the exception that confirms the rule, right? Third option, our definition is wrong. So, if our definitions are wrong, and this happens more often than we expected, we go into this situation, which Taleb calls the situation of Mediocristan and Extremism. So, the way he approaches this in the book is saying, we live in a world which is very complex and is dominated by two main categories. One is the category of Mediocristan, which is all those world that follows bell curve distributions, normal distributions, the height of a person, the height of a population, the weight of a population, and all these things. And we are always assuming that in a simple enough world, we can just create a procedure, refine it, and obtain this bell curve shape. Okay? There's a high degree of predictability. I'm saying something on the edges could happen, but it's very unlikely. It's very unlikely that I will find a person which is 2 meters 30 feet tall. It is very unlikely that I will find a person that is 1 meter tall. There is a certain deviation, but most people are between 150 and 190, or 150 and 2 meters. Okay? Linear decrease, it's a very peaked, sharp decrease, but where very few brands sell a lot, and a lot of brands sell close to none. There is, in this sense, these model the artificial phenomenon, the sales of books. Some books sell a lot, some books sell super few. There's very few books that sell a lot, and there's a lot of books that sell very few. Record sales, CD or LPs or digital downloads, I guess. They follow the same distribution. Wealth distribution in a country follows the same distribution. 10% of the people hold 70% of the riches of a country. It is true. And this, well, it depends on the country and how you actually distribute it. But it's not so different.
No, so 90-10.
Yeah, there are some 90-10 situations. This is definitely a case of where black swans can exist, because a book that sells as much as all the other books together combined is a black swan. It's something which we do not expect and which forces us to rethink our definitions, to rethink how we see the world. And here, the set of tools which we can apply is that of ambiguity. There's no way we can just create a procedure and iterate over this. So, the question is, can we predict this? Can we predict the black swan? Can we address it in some rational way? Yes, why and how? No, why and how?
There are some people that make it their job to predict black swans.
There are some people which make it their jobs, yes, that's definitely true.
No, since there are some people successful, I would say that there is a way to predict black swans.
So you're saying if there is somebody who is successful and who is in some way a black swan himself, there must be a way to predict this, because he in some way he got there by some rational. Okay, this is good. Let's just, if you don't mind, let's just take a quick step back and exemplify some black swans. Okay, I think we missed this step.
Maybe it's possible to say whether it could be that this product, this thing, could be a black swan, and maybe certain good way to say this won't be a black swan, but it's hard to predict if it will be one black swan, but it should be rather easy to say this won't be one of them.
So you can say, I can in some way discard some certain events, observations, features which I'm observing and say, these will not be black swans. So I'm not expecting a person 10 meters
if I'm putting a new, smartphone on the market, it's rather easy to say, since we have this kind of features, it's easy to say this won't be a top-selling smartphone. It's not always the case, but in most cases it's true. And for some interesting feature, we can say this may be a new black swan, but we can say with enough, confidence, because usually black swans are things that have a very low confidence probability, let's say.
So you're saying, well, black swans in some way are unforeseen by definitions, or they are unlikely by definition.
Unlikely.
So if I see something which is very likely, I can expect that to be not a black swan. Is this correct?
Kind of.
But quite, okay. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, you said something that it's not always the case. If that is not always the case, it rests the next book. And you said if I put on the market a smartphone which has some average characteristic, I didn't expect it to be the top seller, but it's not always the case.
Yeah, we may be wrong or right in both cases when we discard it or not. Let's say if I put a mediocre, smartphone on the market, it's very, very likely that I won't sell anything because I have a new brand that no one knows.
Okay, so in this case, my question is the following: How do you base your statement that it is not likely that something will happen?
It should have some new ingredients to it. I don't know, maybe it's very cheap but very performing, and this.
No. What I'm saying, step back. How do you base you said, I expect this not to be selling high.
Okay.
Why do you expect this not to be selling high?
We can only base it on the past, on the experience, because the future is unforeseeable.
We can base it on previous observations. We can base it on previous assumptions which we have built, on previous models which we have built, and saying, well, according to my observations before and according to my models before, this is how I expect this to go. Because all swans up to now have been white, so the next one, if somebody presents me a new swan, I expect it to be white. Okay?
I would like to share my personal experience, but it's something very specific. But a black swan, it's for me, I really without palette, but I think it's an unpredictable event. It's an unpredictable event. It's intrinsic characteristic of black swans. But we learn from that. It's a disruptive event. And my belief is because in 2011 I fell down from my bike. I had a lot of experience because of my body. But that event changed everything in my life. I broke a bone in my leg. I had around 3 surgeries in my leg, and that changed everything. Even though now I can remember that moment, it's very hard. So you could imagine if I work in security, I know, I realize what is the meaning of risk and what is the meaning of riding mountain bike. But I fell down, and everything changed. But I learned a lot. I couldn't anticipate the situation. When I fell down, everything changed. Everything.
So you're saying, despite all the models which I had before about what would happen if I fell, and me expecting that I could fall, but still not knowing that you could fall, but still not expecting it, when that did happen, your perspective changed because you have experienced it, you have in some way changed your models of what the implications of this are and what it means to have a unexpectedly harsh fall in this sense.
I think in my personal experience, but until that moment, everything was under control. But that situation changed everything.
Okay. So, this is relevant, perfect in this sense. Can we think of other black swan events, very informally, based on these definitions which we have discussed, in daily lives, politics, all of this?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump being elected, yes, that's quite the black swan. It is quite the black swan. How would you, if I bring you back 10 years in the past, okay? Obama is here saying, yes, we can, black president, Nobel Prize for Peace. Would you believe that in 10 years Donald Trump gets elected? I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
But Obama is out there
Sorry, that was terrible, but everybody thought about this. Of course. No, but I agree.
Okay.
So there is a principle in the American democracy. There is a principle of alternation in some way. That you say after a certain type of figure, I expect something which kind of denies it. So Obama still came from a point of view which is strongly different from Bush, but it is still, I would say, a president in the way that I would expect it. I mean, if you tell me presidents of the United States, I can put Reagan, I can put JFK, I can put Bush, I can put Senior and Junior, I can put Clinton, I can put Obama, I can't quite put Trump. So in this sense, his presence represented the black swan. And Obama was a very different president from Bush, but I don't think he really was a black swan in this sense. Other ideas of black swans?
The eruption of Pompeii.
The eruption of Pompeii, what do you mean?
Well, they for sure didn't expect it to happen because
Or they wouldn't have built the city.
all the days, if they happen, so they say tomorrow it's not going to happen.
So they said, it didn't happen yesterday, it didn't happen, it didn't happen 10 years ago, it didn't happen 9 years ago, it hasn't happened for 100+ years, it's never going to happen, let's build a city underneath there until, yeah, okay, black swan.
Can we say this could be when heart disease or new disease happen?
New disease?
Yes. Something that say could be.
You can take all the Zika virus. The Zika virus is a perfect example. It's something which was very localized. We said, well, whatever, it's Africa. And it is Africa until it's Europe. And suddenly it's not Africa anymore. Yeah?
It could be also the way it spreads. It's fast.
This is
the US, not the South America, Asia, whatever. Also, not only in the case of Zika virus, but in the case of all the viruses, and what they are called spillover, which are the passage from a virus from the animals to human, and are cases that are unpredictable, like the HIV viruses was a spillover from not a monkey,
chimpanzee,
and the case of Zika is the same. So there are all black swans. So you can't expect this. You can predict the spillover from a virus from an animal to the human. And they expect the big one. They are expecting the big one. In this case, the scientists they're there and waiting for another case of this kind. But they can't say if and when.
And the spillover is a very good example in the sense that it represents a small number of accretions and mutations, in this case, in the code of the virus, until suddenly it doesn't work here, but it works there. And it's a small number of incremental changes until suddenly something shifts radically. So in this sense, it's an incremental sort of innovation, which at some point becomes totally radical. Trump is a very good example. The Brexit is also an interesting example in this sense. You always have the polls saying, well, this is how the vote is going. The stay is going to win for sure. Until you add a factor, you pile them up, eventually leave wins. Okay, so this is these are what we call an effect of the fallacy of induction. We are saying that since we have made a number of observations, we create a generalization. However, this generalization is hasty. It's hasty in the sense that if we have always observed that the immunodeficiency virus only spreads on baboons and chimpanzees, it is never going to get to humans until it gets. And suddenly our generalization is no longer valid. We add a number of observations which, for as big as it is, leads us to a hasty, wrong generalization. Okay? This is the example of Brussels chicken, which was a story which I also told in the battle preparation last time, and it's very simple. There is a chicken. The chicken lives in this with a farmer. The farmer feeds him every day at 9 a.m. And the chicken says, well, this is a good farmer. Every day at 9 a.m. he comes here and feeds me, so he must love me. Until it's Christmas and the farmer kills the chicken. Period. Could the chicken have seen it coming? No way. If he's alone, the only information he has is that the farmer comes there to feed the chicken. Every time he sees the farmer, he assumes that the farmer is going to feed him. Till someday it's the farmer that needs to be fed. This is not something that the chicken can foresee. Okay? Fallacy of induction. Black swans are rooted on the idea that our induction can sometimes, not always, but sometimes lead to hasty generalizations, false conclusions. And this we have discussed. So how does this relate to IV? All these things on the fallacy of induction, black swans, election of Trump.
We are able to foresee in some way a black swan or create one. We can exploit it to do some kind of business.
The creation, the generation of a black swan, or the ability to foresee it, can save you from a crisis. For example, if you can foresee that a crisis is coming, from a certain number of small observations, you can see, well, there's cracks forming.
I don't know if you saw the movie that won the Oscar a couple of years ago, The Big Short, which is a documentary, a kind of movie and documentary from a real story about some brokers that foresee
seen the crisis of 2008, and they made a lot of money doing this. And it's a real story. I mean, they just foreseen the crisis by watching at the local the local real estate market of their city. They saw that people stopped paying the mortgage, and so they say, there is something going on. Let me look better, and they made a lot of money.
So foreseeing is part of the ability to manage black swans. Another way to manage black swans, as you said, is to create it. So I can create a certain number of small changes until I get to that spillover, as it's what is also called the butterfly effect, right? I can flap the wings of many butterflies around the world to create a tornado or something. This is exactly how it works. So this is part of this can be strategized. This can and should be strategized. In the moment in which if you are vulnerable to the black swans, you're vulnerable to the fallacy of induction, and you're vulnerable to losing everything if the crisis comes. Okay? So we take a break?
Yes.
Because it's late. Yes. Okay. And we start at 20. 15, 20. Good.
Continue looking at what they are called network effects. Some of the stuff, maybe you can also look on the example they apply the example also that we did for the science in action before, and also in part for the black hole. But we can start from thinking one thing. That is that the sentence is the first sentence is that Ben saved the telephone when he invented the telephone. In 1866. Obviously, at the beginning, when he said that sentence, there were only two telephones. The one in his basement and the one, if I remember well, in the third floor of the house. But 2 years later, the Bell company had installed 10,000 telephones. Now, what happened to the value of the telephone network in those 2 years? How much it increased? It increased. It stayed the same. From 2 telephones to 10,000. Do you have any guess? So I can make you another question. That is looking at the utility for a user to install a telephone. If I'm familiar. So after 2 years in 1878, a user of that time perceived more value to install a telephone than 2 years before, right? Because if you have only 2 telephones, you can call only another person. If you have 3 telephones, you can call 2 other persons. If you have 10,000 phones, you can call 9,999 persons, right? Telephone. So there is maybe you know it, but there is a law, which is the Metcalfe's law, which tries to with an equation to give a number to the value of a telecommunication network proportional to the number of connections to the network. So, given n the users of a network, the possible connection is, you know it, and this mostly explains most of the growth of the technology and the telecommunication technology, but not only. I mean, also the app when we saw the market app example. You have a number of nodes, and these nodes can have more and more connection. So this value is what you want to achieve when you create something. When you create a telephone, you want that people use it. You want people to buy it, and by use and by buying an object, it increases its perceived values for other users to buy it, because you can do more things if more people have it. So this is what is called a network effect that could be positive. There could be a positive feedback, as we saw earlier, when, for example, also we can use the fax machine as an example. And it's all the same for the phone. There could be different types of network effects. Because if you think, there could be a type that is related to the telephone. So the fact that the other people have the telephone, and I have a telephone, and I can connect to a number of other people. But also, nowadays, it could be related to the fact that using some kind of smartphone, for example, iOS instead of Android, you can have different kind of services or app that you can have. So, if you think in 2007, 2008, when the iPhone was launched, at the time, if I remember well, I don't remember the number, but for example, the apps for Android phone were really low. And Android was still perceived as an OS not that with an appeal that was not that much compared to what was there before. So Nokia and its operating system, or the new iOS of Apple. So a direct network effect is the classic that I already explained. The indirect network effect, it happens when increasing the usage of the product spawns the production of increasingly value complementary goods. So if I have more iOS telephone, I will have more iOS app on the market. And it could happen for all this kind of technology that have some kind of complementary goods attached to it. So you doesn't have only something that could be a computer by itself, or a printer by itself, or a car, but with that we have a whole network of complementary goods that you need to run the technology, and that can be enhanced by having more car on the market, on the road, or you can have with more printer that you can sell to the people, and they need to buy the cartridge with the ink to replace in the future.
Can you make an example of a complementary good that was sold with smartphones and nobody felt the need for before smartphones? But suddenly when we got these fancier, better, slimmer smartphones, everybody felt the need for it. The cases, screen protectors. Nobody cared about putting a screen protector on a Nokia 3300. Power banks, yes.
Yes.
But well, power banks also have a technological reason behind it, as in before, maybe people felt the need for it, but the tech wasn't there. But the cases are perfect. Nobody needs a case for a Nokia phone we could just like play football with. Everybody needs it for a like an iPhone X, I guess. Okay, yeah.
So these are kind of indirect network effects that can happen if a technology or it's spread so much.
What about another complementary product to smartphones which has arguably seen a high increase in use but was already there? So like the cases were something which nobody cared before, screen protectors nobody cared before.
Mobile networking.
What's right?
Mobile networking.
Mobile networking, yes. Infrastructure, yes. Infrastructure is definitely one of those complementary goods. What about consumer goods? Headphones. Headphones, for a great example. I mean, everybody is wearing headphones nowadays. Everybody was also wearing headphones in the 70s, but now we have a greater variety, we have more, and yeah. That's a indirect net effect.
Yes. Then, and as we already said, there could be that this network effect can lead to what is called a bandwagon effect, which is derived from the fact that from an economic point of view, most of the time we try to think as consumer, as or people that assume some rational decision, and maybe we can also talk about this tomorrow, I think, based on some kind of logic, which for the economics is mostly the price. But what happened in reality is, and also that is what, for example, behavioral economics study, is that people, consumer, don't decide what to buy always in a rational way, based not always the cheapest price or the most rational choice. But it could happen that because more people start to believe in something, start to believe that some good has a higher value, then other people opt on the bandwagon of this good or this technology and buy it or vote for it to think for an election, for example. This is the case, the classic case of a bandwagon effect, where people start to vote on the bandwagon of the winner because it's perceived as the winner. So if a technology is perceived as the winner or the best one, for whatever reason, and people start to believe that it's the winner, then they will tend to buy it, want it, and do things to have it.
Can you think of bandwagon effects or like examples of bandwagon effects in recent politics? Italian, I have a bunch thinking, and otherwise. Recent in the last, like, let's say last 10 years. Sorry?
The gay marriage.
The gay marriage.
The American was the best, and now all of the countries are going to
just
open the trade.
In the beginning, just very few countries were doing it. Then when the thing gained traction and people started recognizing it as something valuable, everybody said, let's do this because this will make us look more progressive.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Other examples? Shiripoti. Do you know it? It's an Italian politician. At some point, he effectively was losing his position in the party he was in, and said, "Well, let's just go with the winner." He accepted the bribe and then just went with the winner of the current time, which then is not a winner, was not a winner anymore, but still, he hopped on the wagon of the winner, not rationally, according to his personal beliefs, or maybe yes, because we don't know the beliefs at this point, but not according to his previous behavior. He changed side. Other examples of bandwagons? What about the any given sports tournament? Who do you root for? Who are you rooting in Italian for? Say we get to the World Football Cup, okay? Who do you root for? Not for Italy for sure. Who do you root for? Anybody that roots for France or Germany? Never. Okay. But what happens? The point is, if your first pick, let's say, is not there in the tournament, then probably you have a second pick. And if those teams lose, well, you will just go with the third pick. And the third pick is somebody you're bandwagon with whoever is left and rooting for them. And as the teams drop out, either you drop out with the team because you say, well, I don't care anymore, or you just go along with the winner, or somebody that is not losing.
Even in music, I think there is the same way.
In music?
Yeah.
In which sense?
Despacito.
Despacito.
Everyone listens.
Popularity effect and bandwagon effect for sure. That's a positive feedback. Everybody listens to it, therefore everybody keeps listening to it, and everybody that was not listening into it now listens it. Yeah.
Yes. Actually, bandwagon or also viral. Nowadays, also in marketing, you want to find a viral effect can lead to some kind of positive feedback loop, where the fact is perceived as something cool, take traction, and put the winner in the high five, while the loser of the other one goes down in a negative feedback. It's something that you can see moments where there are maybe two technologies competing for the same market, and there are moments where they are together and both of them can win. But then suddenly, for some reason, one became the winner technology and the other one became the loser one. In the slide, there is the example of the VHS versus Betamax vector for the market. I don't know if you remember VHS or Betamax, the video cassette. So, to keep it short, Betamax was a proprietary technology of Sony, which was, according to the experts, better in terms of technology. So I have a better resolution. It was the best technology for recording, but is the losing technology, because everyone after some years started to use VHS, even if VHS has a resolution not good as the Betamax, as a technology not good as the Betamax. But people started to perceive it as the winner technology for other reasons, not for the design itself of the technology, but for the what we saw previously in the science in action explanation, for the actors that VHS was capable of engage and become an ally, because VHS was a technology developed by a consortium of companies, so not only by one company. And why with Betamax, you had the possibility to use it only with Sony, Sony, what's the name, Betamax recorder, Betamax system. VHS could be used with different range of technology, different range of brand, different range of use, and so VHS started to become the winner technology. Also thanks for the use that you can do with VHS, because VHS at the time could be used to record football matches in US, while Betamax, even with a better resolution and the cassette with a length less than a football match. So people, if they try to record a football match with a Betamax, they didn't arrive to the end of the match. Also, Sony didn't want to publish porn, which was a main traction for VHS at the time. So those are all allies that the VHS technology engaged and took on its side, and that gained the market to VHS, even if it was a technology not bad, not good as a Betamax. So this is what also we saw before with the science in action. We try to apply to a technology case. So we can have, as I said, a virtuous cycle and a vicious cycle, which could be, which could happen. So virtuous cycle for VHS and vicious cycle for Betamax in that case. But to arrive at a network effect that could lead you to this virtuous cycle, you need to attract a critical mass of users. And after that you reach this threshold, you start booming and having a real growth. So at the beginning, you want to attract this critical mass. Now, the problem is how to attract people prior to reach the critical mass that can help you grow. What do you do? What can you do to attract this kind of people, this number of people? Marketing?
Like I call it, it's everywhere. You can see everywhere advertising or something like that.
Okay.
The more you see, or in the radio when you people next to you and so on. Sooner or later, the majority is going to buy it.
Okay. So it's all marketing.
Yes.
So it's all marketing. It's always a very convenient answer, because everything is marketing and nothing is marketing. My question would be the following. What if I wanted to open a sliced pizza shop, and I wanted to open it in Basel, okay, right next to Pizzeria? Slices of pizza. Sure.
Just cook target pizza.
Sorry?
Just cook good pizza and then you'll see.
You say I just make better pizza, and sooner or later people will share. Okay. I don't want to force this, because, as we said, Betamax cooked better pizza, but they didn't sell.
Yeah.
So what kind of?
But we should attract
for example, you said Pogo. You should attract the crowded spots. One of them would be the faculty, one of them would be the, I don't know, the bank, the supermarket.
And how can I make this?
Again, it would be marketing.
Yeah, but what does marketing mean? I give you 1 million for marketing. What do? You eat it.
You sell your product for a lower price, and you how do you say for an undervalued price.
So you
For 1 year.
undervalue your own product
Yeah,
in an attempt to sell it more.
yeah.
You say,
After
well,
sometimes,
I
like,
can sell my slice of pizza for €2. I sell it for 150.
even if it costs more to me, yes,
Even if it costs 160 to make it, why do I do this?
to incentivize the people to buy my pizza and then to get them used to come to my local shop.
So I can get everybody to buy my pizza for 150. That's great. For me, it costs 160. So at some point, I'll say, you know what? Let's sell it at 170. Everybody will stay, or likely stay at my place because it's just used to it. I lock them in. But and now I can actually make a profit out of this because I have a critical mass which supports me to recover those costs and more.
It is what Flixbus did.
It's what Flixbus did.
And Tesla.
And Tesla. Tesla, the car company?
Yes.
Okay.
And also OnePlus is a phone company.
And OnePlus, how did it do it? Huawei. How did OnePlus do it? I'm just curious of this.
Last I heard they are the 6th or 7th model phone. Now they're saying got full price, but the first one they did, they sold at the world price. Admittedly, they probably were a sub-company for one other company that had found.
Okay, so you're saying the first models were very cheap,
Yes.
and this they sold like hotcakes. They just like sold a
So
lot.
actually, the first model was cheap, but at the same time they
Use an invite
they
system.
closed the selling only on invitation. So they create a kind of elite. So you needed an invite to buy the telephone. So they try to create something that is premium because it's only on invitation at the beginning. Also because they didn't have at the time the capability, the production capability that they needed to sell the product to everyone if they open the selling to everyone. Yes. But what if instead of pizza I open a kebab place or because I saw that there is already pizza, I can do something else, no? So I changed my product completely. Instead of doing pizza better or at a cheaper price. It could be another option.
There is kebab too.
Or something else that there isn't in Poland. Now, can you make it whatever you want.
I believe that this distinguishing people as allied thing most of the time works. Because
most of the time
works. Because there are places that say, for example, accessing this free drink, which is almost only €2, but if you want to access it, you must be like younger than 18. If you want to access this, and it encourages the people that have that condition to go for it, even though I believe it is more mental rather than beneficial to say that this is free, we should go and have it. I think if we put, for example, different groups, if you're a student, you would have these options. We would have these options for you. If you are like a teenager, we would have these options for you. This would increase a lot of our users.
Okay. Yes, that's true. And I think that we can finish here.
I don't have time.
It's yeah. And we continue tomorrow to the end of this.